let's begin.
Right, hello and welcome to the Just Discourse Podcast. We are back. Episode, did we decide?
34.
34, something like that. 31, 29.
7.
One of them.
One of them. There's a number in there.
It's another episode, and we're back.
We're back in the new year.
New year. We're there. We made it.
We didn't burn to death in the new year like so.
Exactly. But great to be back. Ready for another cracking year, mate.
Yeah, and we're coming back with a few new things. We're trying out a few different layout with formats. Max and I are actually making a conscious effort to talk about things as opposed to just sitting here and being like, just talking random shit that comes to our head. And to that mind, this episode is brought to you by Animus Physique. Animus provides you with high-quality activewear apparel to help push you to your limits and reach optimal performance. Our listeners get 15% off their first order with Animus if they use the code MAT15 at checkout. That's MATT15 at checkout.
Nice one.
And that's a new start. There you
Slot
go.
that in there.
Yeah, man.
Didn't even know that was coming.
There you go. Well, you got sponsors now, baby. Make sure you have people interested in this.
There we go. Right, so again, following on from our previous episodes, I think we wanted to start with a guiding principle and then move on to the quote. So this was an interesting principle we were speaking about before the episode started. And did you want to go through it, Matt?
Yes, indeed. So, the principle of the day: when faced with someone who has a strong belief in something wrong, based entirely on faith, do not seek to change their mind. And when in the presence of other people, ask questions of them to draw it out and expose their false thinking to others. Now, this one came to me in the shower. No, I was driving along and I was just thinking, we all have people in our lives who think things that are false or just misguided for whatever reason, based on nothing else except for it might be hearsay or it might be something that they believe intrinsically to themselves.
Or they've seen on social media
or anything like that. And you learn the hard way from personal experience trying to speak to them about it that they just won't listen or won't change their mind. So it's pointless from your perspective. It's a waste of your time trying to change that between you and them because there's no end result that is satisfying. There's nothing gained
or
from
positive.
it. Exactly. So what you want to be doing is to make it an efficient use of time to be thinking about. If they're engaging in those sort of topics in front of other people, same thing again, don't argue with them. But if you were to bring out their beliefs by asking them questions about it in front of others, you can then demonstrate to other people, oh, this person's thinking is false. And then whatever happens in the discourse after that is nothing to do with you, because the other people in there might jump in and go, actually, you're wrong because X, Y, and Z, in which case takes it out of your hands.
Yeah, no, I see it a lot, as you said, in common discourse with people that I don't know why or where it comes from, but I think it's probably more emotional reactions to certain things. And I've probably fallen foul to this, in my younger years. It's the confrontation, isn't it? It's people, or certain people seem to think that if they have a belief, an idea, or an understanding of something, that if someone has a different opinion or idea, or fact, or even facts, that they are wrong, and it's your God-given right to force upon them your views and opinions. And we've had it before. We disagree all the time, but I actually find, for me, I prefer meeting people with whom I disagree with, because you tend to learn things, whether it's positive or negative, not in an emotional manner, but in an intellectual manner. Is if they're wrong, as you said, and you have a conversation with them and you ask them questions and they don't get to anywhere or don't improve the horizon of the point they're trying to make, that at least you've engaged with them and you've made an effort to try and understand a new or a better nuanced point of view from them. Or on the flip side, we're wrong quite a lot of the time. There's so much information. We live in the information age these days, and there's so much information out there. Quite a lot of it is probably, I'd say most of it is biased. Quite a lot of it is probably incorrect or has slight snippets within the information that is incorrect. But the main thing is that you want to try and pick out the bits that are true or you can work with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're in the information age, not the knowledge age.
No, exactly. Yeah, they're two different things. And
Yeah.
I was actually thinking the other day that with all this information around, you would think that we'd be able to discern and deduce it a bit more, and our analytical skills would improve. But it would seem the opposite is true. Is that there's so much being bombarded at us that most people don't even stop to think. They sort of choose one thing and then run with it.
Well, I mean, it's the only way to, in the most extreme way of looking at it, it's the only way to remain sane. Because if no one person can completely sort out all of the chatter out there, it's reportedly said that the last man who knew everything that there was to know was John Stuart Mill, who died in 1873. And obviously, that's a bit of a facetious statement, but the point being that after that, the access to information grew exponentially from that point onwards, so it was impossible for any one person to know the cumulative knowledge of the society at the time. Which it just demonstrates, I mean, that was 150 years ago, 160.
And also with the speed that information moves these days, I think we'll become, and I've fallen foul to it, I can't deny, is we put ourselves in positions that 50 to 100 years ago we never would have ever been in / understood / been required to take action or move on, if that makes sense. Like a lot of the things that happen in the government, we speak to a lot of people and they know how to run the government better than the people that are running the government.
Oh, of course.
And because they've watched a couple of snippets on the news or a bit of information here and there, whereas the people that are actually there, don't get me wrong, I believe sometimes there are things that they could do better. However, I would like to think I'm intelligent enough, probably not, but I'd like to think that I don't know what's going on. The information that I have is like a tiny, minuscule percentage of what's actually happening. So for me to make a conscious decision or opinion based on so little facts, it's kind of a stupid thing to do.
Well, this is what cracks me up, because I've got a family member who's obsessed with unorthodox narratives.
Go on.
Because I'm not using conspiracy theories, because that's a stupid term. But
because the theory
it's not theory.
Tends to be
a
lot of them, like Alex Jones, who, if anybody's ever watched Alex Jones, he's extremely entertaining.
It's so enjoyable.
But over the years that I've watched him, and been entertained by him, a couple of years down the line, what he's saying comes out to be true, and you're like, oh shit, like, that's actually scary.
Yeah. But anyway, before I was rudely interrupted.
Sorry.
When it comes to Alex Jones, always interrupt me for Alex Jones. But with him, it's derailed my thoughts now. What was I going to say?
About
it was a case of exactly to what you were saying about the information that we're given is barely a fraction of what's actually going on. It's another example of slight cognitive dissonance, because he doesn't believe what he's being shown by the news, which is a correct assumption. That's fair.
I don't believe.
I don't believe it either, but that's a fair assumption.
It's all fear mongering, unfortunately.
But then, because that is not true, he then believes that whatever the alternative is true, based on, again, it's the same principle. We're getting a limited amount of information fed to us by whoever, about other people that are fed from other people, and some people, like this guy, would leap to believe that, because if the conventional narrative is untrue, then something has to be true, and whatever is the first thing is given to me, that must be true, therefore, as opposed to, no, that could be false as well, because if you consider that as well, my hypothesis is his brain would just crumble, because then there is no reality. So it's not, so his brain works because, there is a reality, it's just not the one that's being shown, as opposed to, we have no possible way of knowing what reality is of what's going on with these higher echelons, because they are specifically the higher echelons. Because it's,
and you've never experienced it, so how can you have
you have no idea.
Based opinion on it?
Yeah, and again, this is not for everything that he talks about. Some things are very insightful, but some things I'm like, you're making assumptions just because you want there to be an answer that, again, like the truth we are shown, you've no way of knowing if that's correct or not.
Yeah, of course. And, I can't remember where I read it, but it was probably about 10 years ago now, and it said that in the information age, you've got to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn as quickly as possible.
Wow.
It's not about what you know these days, it's about what you can learn, unlearn, and relearn, because a lot of the information, as you say, presented is incorrect. So you've got to be able to step back from it and think, okay, well, I was, not necessarily I was wrong, but the information I was given and worked upon was wrong. So I've got to find new information that works or appears to be correct in when I need it or I'm using it in whatever part of life I'm in, and then move on to the next piece as well. And what I mean by that is, or how I tend to process it is, I will see information a bit like the news. Now, for me, the news, I tend to think anything they say, the opposite is occurring. So I rarely watch it because most of it is fear-mongering, and honestly, it's painful to listen to.
And also just boring.
Yeah, and when it's like
just nonsense.
And also, they give so little information. Like, you listen to the news and it's like 10 people have been murdered in 4 roads away from you or something like that.
Coming up, Rosie's got a new garden.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like, why are they next to each other? Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. But with the age of the internet, we do have the ability to do our own research, and do you remember during COVID, do
your own research?
Yeah, they were, what's it called? They were demonising people that would decide to do their own research and being called anti-vaxxers and blah 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 blah, all that boring shit. But it's true, you can choose to believe what you're told, which before the internet, it's all you could do. So you kind of had an excuse. Mm-hmm. That, well, that's the only information out there, so that's what I know and can work with. Whereas these days, you have the opportunity to delve a bit deeper to find out what's going on. Now, again, as you say, the information you could find could be wrong, but I tend to think about it is, let's say 10% of everything you hear, there's an element of that is correct. Mm-hmm. So look at 100 different examples or 100 different pieces of information and take 10% out of all of them. The ones that concur or are similar or appear to be on the same lines, it's probably safe to say that that's true, and then work with that again until you get more information that changes the thought or opinion on that.
Yeah, which is how it should be for everything. If you have that's the scientific approach.
Well, that is science, isn't it? Exactly.
To anything, you have your hypothesis, you then you test it, and if it's like, you test it X amount of times. If it's then wrong, you then reevaluate your hypothesis from there. Because we're going down this path of it being so convoluted about how you work out what is true, what is not true, what we're told, what we're shown. The only thing you can ever truly know at any given time is what is going on right now in exactly what is happening with you right now. Like, I know for a fact right now that you're here, this table is here, you and I have this conversation. Outside of this room, I don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else is going on. That's the only thing you can really ever know, 100%. And then you go down that whole argument about the Matrix simulation, game theory, blah, blah, blah. But it's like the Yuval Noah Harari point that he made in Sapiens about we have these agreed collective myths. Mm-hmm. Like, laws are a myth. They're just agreed upon. And because they don't physically exist anywhere.
And they don't necessarily have to be good or bad.
No, they just are.
We're sort of told as children, we have laws to keep everyone safe and make sure everyone lives the best life, etc., etc. But they're not, as you say, they just all agreed upon terms. If everyone decides that murdering is good and it's the right thing to do,
then it will happen. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
but then also, like we agree upon them because it's like that thing about
it's what we all accept.
Well, it's when I did up my ethics module in philosophy. They said that there's it's kind of like an aspect of utilitarianism in that this is the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
Yeah.
So if you have if that's your overarching guiding principle, saying greatest good for the greatest number, okay, cool. So murder, Okay, that's not going to work because then a lot of people are going to be, there's a potential for people to be dying off. And if you go past a certain number, then that'll be a lot of people dying. You basically give a free license for everyone to be killed. Okay, so that's not the greatest good because then a greatest good would be to live. So that's okay. So murder's bad. Cool. Agreed on that one. But then things get really squirrely like later on from that point because people will say the argument of, oh, murder's bad, but what if we had to kill this one person so these 10 people can live?
Mm-hmm.
And you're there like, that's where utilitarianism kind of falls off a cliff because arguably you kill that one person so 10 can live, but that one person could be, I don't know, a nurse and these 10 people could be prisoners.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one to sort of comprehend and understand, isn't it? Because there's so many different variables to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why at this stage in the lives that we live, we've come to the agreed point that we probably just shouldn't murder anyone because whatever you do. Don't get me wrong, I think it's gone too far the other way, not with murder, but with most
Bring
laws.
back murder.
Yeah.
Oh my,
Capital
mic
punishment.
sounds weird.
Capital punishment. Not
Capital punishment. Hanging. What is going on with this? Okay, anyway.
But yeah, no, it gets to the point like, we see it in schools now where teachers aren't allowed to discipline the kids. And it gets to a point where, I don't know about you, but I will act and talk like I wasn't like this when I went into the workforce. I could be wrong. But I don't think I was, based on the morals and principles I had moving into it. But most of the young people I see in the workforce these days, they can't wait to get on their phones. That is the most irritating thing to me, is when I don't know if I was even told this, I may have been, but if you're at work, especially being paid to do a specific job, you shouldn't be on your phone at all. Personal phone, like what are you doing? Like you're there to do a job and work and be paid to do that job. Every time you're on your phone, effectively you're stealing, aren't you? You're being paid not to do what you're supposed to do. And it's like, I don't know if that is a symptom of the society we live in these days, but we live in the freest and most abundant time in history, yet we're the most depressed. We've got the highest rate of suicides, all of those negative things, and I'm unsure as to where it comes from. Do you think it's maybe because people have had it too easy? I was watching a film yesterday. It was based in the 1918, and my point on that was, up until our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation, pretty much all of human history, there's been a war during the lifetime or the lifespan of people. So they've had to do things to save themselves and their country, etc., etc. And therefore they've had a proper appreciation of life outside of war. Whereas these days we don't really know any real struggle. The only struggle we have is financial struggle. And to me, that's the most frustrating one, because there is literally trillions, probably quadrillions of pounds, dollars, currency out there. And people are like crying because they've got no money. And it's like, well, you literally have to go and get it. You haven't got to murder anyone for it or do anything like that. You've got to get on your laptop that you've got, on your phone that you've got, and work out a plan in order to get it. But most people would rather sit there and moan about it. To me, it's extremely confusing.
There's so much to unpack from there.
Yeah, I went on a bit of a rant.
There was a good rant. The thought I was having what you're saying about like society, people are complaining about it. Yes, society has faults, but you try and come up with one from scratch.
How do you mean?
How the hell do you establish a society from scratch?
Oh no, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, again, not you, just someone. People who are complaining about it.
Yeah.
You try and come up with something right now, then get everyone to agree to.
Yeah,
good luck with that.
For us in human history to be able to get to this level, whereas, previously it was war, raping, pillaging, murdering, all that type of stuff, to get to a point where we've all managed to work together in order to build these incredible cities and towns and countries. It's absolutely amazing that there is no appreciation for it.
There's a gentleman called Steven Pinker who's a statistician, and he's written a book that says, honestly, this is the best time to be alive.
Yeah.
Because everything you just said, all of those stats over the last 100 years, everything's come down. Everything's come down. They say, as you say, rapes come down, famines come down, wars come down. So famine, so death by starvation has come down. Cholera, genetic diseases, infant mortality, mother mortality by death by birth, all of that shit's come down. So exactly as you're saying, right, this is the best time to be alive.
It's also the first time in human history you've been able to sit at your home on your ass and earn millions of pounds.
Yeah, the potential to earn millions. Yes, very true.
Whereas you've never been able to do it before. It's always you've had to be out speaking to people, creating deals, etc.
Okay.
Like face to face.
So, a point that you said about complaining, there's a dopaminergic brain pathway that happens. If I'm going to say to you, Max, I'm going to do a Ultra Beast Spartan race this year, and I'm going to win that. I'm going to be number one in that heat. I'm going to do 50 kilometers and 100 obstacles. I'm going to be number one in the whole country. Just saying that, I genuinely feel pretty good. Like that's exciting. That's cool. Because I've now said that, that dopaminergic pathway is the same as me actually doing it. So now I have no chemical reason or no chemical incentive to go and do that. Besides the social status and accountability of, I've told you this, therefore if I don't do it, I'm going to lose face. But the chemicals have gone. Like, it's going to be really hard for me to get those back and get the same thing from there.
Was that Andrew Huberman?
Yes.
That's
Which is fascinating, because like, if you your brain doesn't know the difference between you saying something and doing it. The same thing applies to complaining. If someone's complaining about a problem, it's the same thing as them fixing it.
Really?
So if you are...
Same dopamine.
It's the same system. So you're complaining, and people complain because it's like to get the frustration out, and usually they feel pretty good afterwards. So as an emotional tool, it's really useful because it gets that stress out, gets the frustration out, makes you feel better.
However...
Don't interrupt.
Sorry, I'm terrible.
As something to actually fix the issue, it's such a waste of energy. It's such a waste. Because that compunction and that incentive to actually improve your situation has gone. You have no chemical push to do that now. Which, and complaining is easy. Like, anyone can do it about anything. Right now, requires no effort. I can do it with my feet, sat up on a stool, eating 4 bags of Doritos at the same time. Big gut hanging out over my stomach. And I feel as great as if I've gone and, binned all of that. And I've spent the last hour walking around the block. Over to you.
However, is
we need like a chess stop clock.
We do. And this is what confuses me the most. And
I'm gonna get one.
You could even put me in a position now that I'm complaining, and I'd like to think that I'm not a complainer. I always try and actively, if I ever find myself complaining, stop myself from complaining, and work out a plan in order to resolve that issue. And I think that's where the confusion and frustration comes from me is, as you said, it's great to have the chemical reaction that gives you the satisfaction from moaning that's sorted the situation. But it hasn't at the end of the day. The situation's still going to be there. And I see it as like an endless cycle loop. That you're stuck in a loop. In a week's time or day's time or whatever, however long it's going to be, you're going to be moaning about it again. And the situation is still exactly the same. So you're still in the same space.
Do you know what is a feature of people who complain?
Go on.
They complain about the same stuff over and over.
Yeah. And the endless loop. I've said it before. I'm not a particularly intelligent guy. However, going round and round in circles just frustrates me more than anything, because it's just a complete waste of time. At the end of the day, the only thing we really have in this world of abundance the only thing we don't have in this world of abundance is an abundance of time. But that's limited. At some point, that's going to end. So would you not want to do, or not necessarily achieve, but at least experience as many things as possible? And I've had conversations before with people, and they say, and it is usually the brokies, usually the poor people that are nowhere and don't want to get themselves out of it. They're like, oh, well, money isn't everything. All you care about is money. And it's like, no, I couldn't give a shit about money. Money is irrelevant to me. However, in this society, to gain freedom, you have to buy it with money. And I want freedom. I want freedom to be able to do whatever I want and move wherever I want to go at any given moment. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you decide to look at it, the only way to do that is to amass as much money as possible. And that doesn't mean it needs to be millions and billions. It just needs to be the amount that you need to do what it is you want to do.
Yeah. So to give there was something I heard was a way of reframing time so people value it more and get more done. If you're looking at an average life of 76 years, which is the African male,
I watched that the other day.
You'll live about 3,962 weeks. So, let's just round up and say 80. So, and just say 4,000 weeks. Easy way to break it down that way. You have about 2,500 weeks left. I've got 2,550, 2,560, that sort of thing.
All right.
So when you reframe it like that, you're like, fuck.
You start worrying. And the thing
you're like, oh shit.
The one that put in the most perspective for me, I can't remember who said it. I think it might have been even Chris Rock or someone like a comedian. And it said, like, if you live to 78 years old, you only have 78 summers.
Oh, was it Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy,
Yeah,
that's it. You only have
amazing.
78
Yeah,
summers,
really good.
78 winters,
Yeah.
78, autumns, and it's like
78 Christmases.
78 Christmases, yeah, and you think, Jesus, like,
That's not a lot.
that is not a lot.
Yeah.
And you've got to make the most of it while you can. Well, you don't have to, but you can, if you don't want to, you probably live a pretty depressive and boring life. But, I come from the point of view is I want to experience as much as I can in this short space of time. And the only way from getting there is action.
True.
Moving forward. Stop.
This is the no. That's I was meant my buzzer.
Oh, no, yeah. No, I think we should actually get that.
I'll get one. Yes, I could get one for like a tenner. This is the weird dichotomy and duality of what you and I are doing here, because we started this because we wanted to try and add benefit to other people through the combination of knowledge that you and I have, and then also just thinking out loud. So this is like a cathartic release of thoughts to then work it through our lives. If we can benefit one person from all of this, we've done our job.
Yeah.
Equally, if X amount of people listen to this and the majority don't do anything, for you and I, that's fucking fantastic, because that means the bar keeps getting lower and lower that we have to pass to be more than average, which is brilliant. Like Chris Williamson said this. He said that if you want to be, what was it? He said that the typical American man is overweight, divorced, and has less than 1,000 in the bank. That's the bar you need to reach to be average. Yeah. Oh, fucking brilliant.
To be above average is pretty fucking easy.
Brilliant. That's so good.
And it's like to be in the 1% of earners in the UK is something stupid like £80,000.
Wow.
It's like, Jesus Christ, like, come on, guys, pull your finger out.
Yeah, and it's fascinating with routes to get to that job, because we are taught from a young age that the path to be getting to 80 grand is you go to primary school, you go to secondary school, you go to sixth form or college, you then go to university, which gets you a specialised degree, and then you go from that degree to a well-paying job, 35, 40k, and then you just gradually work your way up until you get senior management or director, in which case you're probably about 80 to 110, and then that's you done. And then that's the conveyor belt that we're all sort of put through there.
Yeah.
But for the majority of people, that if they follow that path, that's not the outcome. For most people, there's going to be a small number of people who will follow that trajectory, and they will become in those high positions. But those high positions are very finite, whereas the amount of people going through the education system is a fuck ton of people. So they can't all reach those you can't all be a director. So the majority of people, and of course it is course dependent as well, if you pick some bullshit course, you're going to end up working in Sainsbury's.
Harry Potter studies,
Which is like, Yeah,
it's not
okay.
a problem if you want
No.
a degree in Harry Potter. That's absolutely fine, but don't expect
to get money out of it.
any return on your investment. There.
Yeah, because you go that route, and the majority of people who follow that university degree they'll either never hit the highest on their aim before, or it's going to take them a very, very long time. Because again, it's just limited numbers, huge amount of people. How do you choose? Whereas if you go,
supply and demand, isn't it?
Whereas if you skip all of that, I met a guy in January who, when he was 16, he started working in Legoland selling the hot dogs. So he was the hot dog stand guy. When I met him was 16 years later, and he's now the European events organizer for Lego.
Yeah.
And all he did was just stay in that one business and just show that he cared about it, and just worked his way up from different points from there. And he didn't. It wasn't just a linear path either. It was just
it never
this. Yeah.
No, yeah. So my point on that there's I think it was Patrick Bet-David. He's a gangster, honestly. Not a real gangster. Like he's just a G, an incredible businessman, and not entertainer, but he is.
No.
To you and I, we'd probably find it entertaining to listen to him. But I think he was. It may have been Your Next 5 Steps, which is one of his books that he wrote. He was talking about not everyone has to be an entrepreneur. You can be an intrapreneur, and the intrapreneur is effectively that guy that works in Legoland. Instead of going and creating your own business, because everybody has different skills and different abilities in life and what they're strong at, etc. And if you don't want to take the risk, you're probably better off but you're ambitious, you're probably better off working for a big company like that and working your way through, because the pathway's already set, it's already made, so you've got the ability to follow it and move up. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur, you have to create your own way, which is a lot harder. There's a lot more to lose, there's a lot more stress. You have to risk so much more when you're going down that route. Depending on your personality, it can be extremely rewarding. But I've always thought that, myself, is would I have been better working through a company in order to get to the top? Because there's various different ways to make it, and especially with that, for example, let's say he was working at Legoland. I don't know if they're a public company. I assume they are.
I'd imagine so.
But let's say he started working there, what did you say, 15 years ago?
Yep.
And every month he put money into stocks, like Legoland stocks. He not only is he working there and building his way up to increase his income, he's also owning a part of that business, and he can do. Whereas with a private company, unless the owner decides they want to give you equity, you can't just go and buy it. And that's a bit like Warren Buffett. I think I was reading the other day, he put $1 billion into Coca-Cola in, I think it was 1983 or something like that, and he gets about 730 million pounds in dividends every year now.
Wow.
So I think it was about in every 15 or 16 months, he gets his initial investment back, and he's had it for what?
40 years.
40 years.
Incredible.
And that dividends is growing.
Yeah.
One with the increase in the stock price, but I can imagine the dividends increases as well. So
that was another thing I want to speak to you about today. The the phrase "tax the rich."
Yep.
Who was saying it? It was a guy who's created the Yellowstone documentary and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Oh, I'd like to attack that one too.
Yeah,
Go
we'll
on.
see. Whatever. But he was on Rogan the other day, and he was saying about tax the rich is stupid because on paper the rich aren't making any money.
Mm-hmm.
They're not getting paid a salary because they're not paid by a company. Mm-hmm. They own the company.
And they create the value.
They create the value. So he's saying, like Bezos, for example, if he were to actually physically take the money that he is worth from Amazon, it would crash it.
Yeah.
Amazon would just burst into flames. So they get paid by dividends or whatever business dealing they do or any dealing, they just say, oh, this is collateral.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to do anything. You just say, oh, I'm worth X amount. And they're like, cool, here's 4 boats.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had no idea until he said that. I was like, that is fascinating because tax the rich doesn't actually do anything. And that phrase came from New York in the 80s, after like Occupy Wall Street and all that sort of stuff. The majority of the taxpayers in New York City, are the highest earners.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, because if you earn more money, you pay more tax.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And so the argument is absurd. It's ridiculous. But I was like, I had no idea that was the way it worked that way.
No, it is crazy, and there is multiple facets I wanted to touch on there. The first one is there are two really. I'm sure there's more, but the two that come to mind. There are two types of ways people get paid. One is they sell their time for money, which is a typical employee. They get paid to sell their time, but they don't really tend to create the most value because they're just sat there, watching the clock, ready to get out there. Or you get the other type, which are the entrepreneurs/intrapreneurs, where they get paid on their results. It's like we said before about commissions, etc. Is if they don't perform, then they don't get paid.
Yep.
So they have got every ounce of their energy and focus on creating value and creating a good product or creating a good service in order, not necessarily to get paid. Most of them don't, especially like Elon Musk. He's got enough money. He doesn't do it to get paid. He does it because he wants to create a better world and a better life for everyone around. And if you try to heavily tax people like that, they'll just think, oh, well, what's the point? I won't bother. I can't be asked. And then that will ruin your or a lot of people's way of life, because most people don't create and add value and make the world a better place. They just sort of leech off it. And if you haven't got people like that getting the benefits in order to create the better products, the world's not going to be better, is it? We're not going to have better cars, we're not going to have better technology, we're not going to have better fuels and efficiencies and all those types of things. And then the other one I wanted to touch on is tax the rich. Well, as you said in your sort of closing statement, is the rich get taxed the most already. So the couple of points I wanted to make there is, the first one is when you push for higher taxes on the rich, as they say, all you're doing is making it more difficult for you to get out of serfdom, because you're creating more steps that you have to elevate over in order to get out of your current position. So let's use stamp duty for an example.
Yeah.
Before, I think it was, when did stamp duty come in? I think it was 83 or something like that.
Yeah.
There was no stamp duty, so it's much easier to buy a house. Houses were cheaper. Stamp duty comes in. Okay, well, you've got to pay more to buy a house. Therefore, and I think it only started at something stupid like 1 or 2%. Now, you're looking. Go on.
Initially, 1694 is when it was introduced.
1694.
By the English as a transaction tax to raise money for war against France, and was raised on goods including hats, newspapers, and patent medicine. So that's the original, not the contemporary. But that's where the principle came from. Carol.
But yeah, so now it's made it much harder for people to buy properties and homes for them to live in, because they've got to pay so much tax just in order to buy a house. And so that's an example of tax the rich, or creating more taxes in order to give what you think is going to give you a better life. But the fallacy of that is the only people that get the better life and the ones that are pushing it are the politicians, because they're the ones that are getting paid off the tax.
Yep.
They're the ones that require more taxes in order for them to spend more. Really, you want lower taxes so you can do whatever you want with your money, and you can make the decision where you want to put it.
Well, that's the thing. We have an abundance of money, as you said earlier, in not just in the UK, but the entire planet. But for this case, we're going to say for the UK there. But it's a case of, it's just mismanagement. because
terrible management. Yeah.
because you have people in office who have no business savvy at all. They have no idea what's going on. So all they know, they're very good. The ones who are good at it are very good at speaking, and they're very good at distraction and subverting attention, and at just saying absolute bollocks to just keep their job and sound impressive, but they're not actually doing anything. United Kingdom foreign exchange reserves are measured at 115.5 billion in October 2023.
What's that? Sorry, the money reserve.
The Treasury Reserve, yeah, is what's held at.
Which is not a lot, to be fair.
Well, it's still going to Ukraine, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I say that. I mean, let me find out.
Also, think how much the government must take just in income tax every month.
Fuck's sake.
Go on.
4.6 billion
That's what we've given.
in the last 2 years.
It's madness, isn't it? Madness.
But yeah, was it anyway? That's a separate topic.
But the second point I wanted to make is that, but on tax the rich is, as I said, the rich pay the most tax anyway. Let's say they own businesses. Well, they pay VAT on everything that they charge, and this is the most frustrating thing is, and again I'm moaning and complaining, which I shouldn't be. But this is what I find quite funny is I have to charge my customer VAT, which effectively makes it more expensive for them, which makes them less likely to pay or want to buy the product because it's 20% more. So I'm making it more difficult for my customer. I have to take the tax and then have to pay for it. So effectively I'm a tax collector for the government.
Yeah, you're a middleman.
Yeah. And, obviously I get VAT off of the things that I purchase. That's the benefit. But, really, it's a bit of a unfair situation, isn't it?
And you don't get the VAT return in real time. It's in arrears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anywhere up to 12 months down the line.
Well, no, it's every quarter you get it back.
Oh, fine. Okay, cool.
So it's not that bad.
No,
not that bad.
but still, that's not useful because, it's, as you say, it's just another thing that the customer has to pay for.
And then, sorry, on that one, so we pay VAT, we pay income tax, we pay tax on employing people,
Corporate tax.
So you pay your income tax, but the business also pays employment tax on top of that as well.
Yeah.
So there is various different taxes just to get to a point where you can earn some money.
National insurance contribution.
That's what I mean. Yeah, national insurance. Yeah. You've got all of that, and it's about 13% on top of the salaries.
Geez, so whatever it is, whatever your bottom line is, you've got to add all of that on top of it as well.
Yeah. So say you're earning 10 grand, which you're not. Let's say you're earning 30 grand.
Yeah.
It's £3,900 additional a year that has to be paid by the business in tax, just for employing you.
Fascinating, isn't it?
And that's before you've bought all the products or whatever it is, the services that you require to create the income. It's mental.
I was talking to someone who was saying that when you're coming to finding yourself employment at the end of the year, whatever assets you've bought and haven't moved as of yet, they can be listed as a write-off because that's just dead money. So you spent the money.
Repeat that again, sorry.
So I could be butchering this because I don't have the same account finance head. But someone was saying that if you were to get a certain amount of stock, being self-employed, and when you're informing your accountant, you can say, I've got £1,000 worth of stock just sat here that hasn't shifted yet. They can say that is a write-off per se because that's money that you spent, as opposed to that's money that that's the expense that you've had out and you haven't sold it, so you haven't made any money on it. So there's nothing to tax because you've already paid for it.
So I'm not self-employed, so I don't know how that works. But
right,
obviously, every cost associated with the business comes off the tax.
Yeah.
So say your turnover is 100 grand, and you spend 50 grand on whatever it is.
Yeah.
Your taxable income is only the 50 grand.
Yeah. It's not the profit.
Whereas that is going back to my comment about the tax from the government and stuff like that. It wasn't really a moan. It's more of an example because I do genuinely believe in government And in paying taxes, the mismanagement of it, a bit like the NHS. NHS is a fantastic service that we have in the UK. The mismanagement of it for a lot of people is quite frustrating. However, it's a great service to have, same as the government. I believe in paying taxes in order to pay for such things as the NHS, making sure the government. And this, going back to my original point, where people moan about the government, is you don't understand the threats that they're thwarting
Yep.
from other countries. Russia, China, all these countries that be coming in to bomb and attack us. They don't every day come out and go, Kim Jong-un's been on the phone, says if we don't do this, then he's going to come and attack us, does he? Because they don't want to panic anyone. But they probably are dealing with certain things like that, which we never see or hear of. So having a negative opinion on them in those situations, I think, is highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Naive.
Yeah, and if people want to, a further example of that is the military. If you were to, where do you think their money comes from?
Yeah,
it comes from all of us.
Exactly,
we pay to keep them looking after us.
And you want that.
100%.
You want that to be set. Otherwise, we don't have this way of life we have.
We don't have a good air force. We don't have a good navy. We don't have a good military.
No, exactly. And the tax the rich is a bit crazy. And as I said, to fair enough, you don't want to elevate yourself out of the position you're in, right? But say you have children and they all want to elevate themselves out. You've created a situation where it's much harder for them to have a better life because you've made it more difficult for them.
Yep.
To me, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Not only are you making your life more difficult, you're making it more difficult for everyone around you. To me, it's crazy. If you want a better life, the only person that can do anything about it is you, especially in this country. They say America is the land of the free, home of the brave, all that jazz. If I'm honest,
that's my favourite song. Carol.
Yeah. If I'm honest, it is when you look into it. And again, I've only been to America once, so I can't really have a proper comment on it. But from what you see from the news or social media and all those types of things, those outlets, is this one? It's quite a dangerous place because there are guns everywhere. You can just be shot at any moment. But it's not that free. Whereas I personally believe, and I am biased, that England or the UK is the safest and freest country in the world. Don't get me wrong, there are some aspects with their socialist tendencies, but I think those side of things are also misunderstood. And I was speaking to the old man about it when I was a lot younger, and I was going down the route of welfare, and it was frustrating me that you have to pay taxes for people that don't want to work. And he put it quite bluntly like this. He said, look, the thing is, there's always going to be a certain percentage, 5-10% of people, that whatever system is in place are going to take the piss and abuse it. But he said for the other 95-90%, there are people that genuinely are unable to work for whatever reason, disabilities, mental illnesses, physical issues. They've broken their leg or something like that, and they can't physically work. And in a well-rounded society, what would you do in that situation? And he put it on me. He said, well, what would you do? And I was sort of perplexed because I never really thought about it like that. And he said, what, would you just let them go hungry and starve and die? He said, where's the humanity in that? He said, I'd much rather, as a capable human being, earn money and pay tax on it to provide a good, rounded, safe lifestyle for the people that physically can't. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's, where can you get your morality from?
Yeah, if what you're doing doesn't benefit other people, well, it's like we said in the previous episode, if what you're doing doesn't benefit other people, you're not thinking high enough.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we all live in a society together. It's a bit like, every day you go out on the roads. Well, if the roads weren't there, how are you going to get there?
Yeah. Have you seen the TV show Newsroom, where there's a famous speech by Jeff Daniels about when the question's asked, why is America the greatest country in the world?
No, I haven't.
Okay, this may not work, but I'm going to see if we can get sound through this.
Doesn't it feel good?
Okay, it comes out here. Okay.
It feels right.
Let's watch this.
Start. Create your own destiny.
I'll edit this out.
close to
America
yeah.
is the greatest country in the world.
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis? Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Well, the New York Jets. No, I'm going to hold you to an answer on that. What makes America the greatest country in the world? Why is America
Not the greatest country in the world, Professor. That's my answer.
You're saying
Yes.
Let's talk about
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of her paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime, column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey, and with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yet you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Nailed it.
Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.
And what film's that?
It's a TV show called The Newsroom.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
It's fucking outstanding, that is.
No, it's
Yeah.
It's madness, isn't it?
Incredible.
A lot of that is propaganda, though, isn't it? It's pushed to, I don't necessarily know it's a negative thing, but to encourage people to do what's required, or push them in a certain direction.
What is the propaganda? Is his statement, or the things that they aspire to, or everything he said before?
Yeah, that this is the greatest country in the world.
Yeah, that is propaganda, yeah, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a bit annoying to the rest of us.
And it depends how you choose to look at it as well. Again, if you're the greatest country in the world, it promotes lethargy to a certain number of people as well, because they're like, well, we're the best. So
we're already the best.
We're already at the top. So
yeah, what is there to do?
Whereas if you're 10th or lower or higher than that, there's that element of competition or requirement to push yourself to be better, to catch up.
Yeah, I wonder if, like a boxer, if it's easier to attain the throne than it is to defend it. I wonder.
It's got to be more exciting.
It's more rewarding.
Rewarding to attain the throne than to defend it, because you've got nothing to lose when you're on the way up, but you've got everything to gain.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're defending the title, you've got everything to lose. And a lot of the time, most people are rooting against you. If you see with most of the titles, no matter how much you like the person on the way up, if they hold that title for many months, years, 5 years or whatever, there comes a point where people are like, right, they switch, they turn against him. And they're like, right, I want the new guy to win now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like human psychology. You want the underdog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to know, I don't know if you know, if you've got any facts or reasoning behind that. Do you know why that is?
What, for the underdog switch?
Yeah.
The underdog is more relatable.
I was going to say, is it because most people are the underdog?
Well, because most people watching, if they're watching, again, boxing is such an easy example, they're watching that, they're looking at Mike Tyson, Joe Silling, Muhammad Ali, whoever, and they're like, I can't beat him. And then there's another guy who's not as good as him. You're like, I'm more like the other guy than I am the winner. That's the relatability for it. So you want to cheer him because we see ourselves within it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about sport. Sport, whether it's team sports or one-on-one, we relate to it so much because it's analogous for warfare.
Yeah, in males.
Yeah, and there's that genetic coding in us to responding to fighting, and
Or not necessarily fighting, but competition.
Competition. Well, warfare. War is the genetic coding, and again, because we are all cursed with the sin of relativity. We only ever know the universe and the world that exists as it is right now. You and I only ever know a reality where TV exists, where we have films, we have TV shows, we have entertainment, we have radio. We grew up before the internet, or before the internet as it is right now. We grew up with the internet as it is right now. So all we know of reality as it is there's all this entertainment, there's all of these games we can watch, there's all these things we can do, we can watch two guys punch the shit out of each other, we can watch these guys break each other's limbs, and we can watch 10 giant dudes with mouth guards run against 10 other giant dudes with mouth guards and smash into each other. 100 years ago, you couldn't see any of that shit. Or you're going to see, like, one of them, in the 20s. Yeah. Was there a black and white rugby game? I don't know, probably not. You didn't see that. What you did have was a leftover of the World War One, and then the ramp up to World War Two, where hundreds of thousands of people died fighting in trenches. And then before that, the previous century, you had the 100 Years' War, the French versus the English, people still standing up and running at each other with fucking bayonets and musket guns, or the English colonies running over pygmies in Africa. It's just warfare we spent an enormous proportion of human existence fighting, and in comparison, a blink of an eye, not fighting. Mm-hmm. So it's actually incredible that we've got to this point now where we've got so few warriors left, or we all have it, and this is where depression comes in. Linking back to your first point an hour ago, why have we got all this depression now? That's probably an aspect for it, is there all that unrealized potential, because we all have that genetic code of slaughterers and barbarians before us, because we, as we said ad nauseum, our ancestors that led all the way to us here didn't survive because they were nice. They survived because they were barbarians, and they were the ones that survived, and they were the ones that pulled the other person's head off. Yeah. So we all have the genetic,
and did what was necessary to protect and provide.
All of us have a genetic code of conquerors in us, because otherwise we wouldn't be here.
No, it's interesting you say that as well, because I'm sure every generation says this, and I'm over 30 now, so I'm pushing myself into that situation. But I do genuinely think we were probably, especially our parents' generation, that was the best generation to live in history, and I think we at our age were the last lucky ones in terms of the world that we live in. I.e., we grew up without the internet. We grew up properly socialising, going out and seeing people without doing it over the internet. I think it was probably when we were, well, for me, you for a bit younger, but sort of 12, 13, when MSN became a thing.
Yeah,
and
same.
Then you sort of start messaging over there. And at first it was great because you connect with people all around the world, and you can meet up with new people and speak to people that you haven't seen for a while. But then I think these days it's become more of a negative. The reason I say is I think like respect, courageousness, and just your word in general are nigh on non-existent in the generations younger than us. The reason I say that is back in the day, especially in our parents' generation, you'd make plans with someone, right? And you'd be there. It could be 4 days' time, 10 o'clock at this restaurant or wherever, and they'd be there. Whereas these days, you notice, I don't know if it's because we all live busy lives and things change, but people change and cancel and move plans and situations more often than I assume they used to. Now, as I said, there's a lot more to do these days, so that would make sense, and people, I assume, would prioritise the better thing or what they deem to be better for them. But it's what's the word I'm sort of looking for? It's massively changed the dynamic of human interaction.
My hypothesis for this is that it's created the option. So with this technology now, compared to when our parents were teenagers, if they made a plan at school, okay, tomorrow, 6 p.m, we're going to go see a film, you fucking turn up at 6 p.m. because you had no way of getting hold of them besides landline call.
You'd have to know it and it'd be written down in a book, which
when I was 16,
the kid you didn't have.
Yeah, when I was 16, my closest mate at the time was the absolute fucking worst for being late or being on time. He was never, ever on time. Ever. And it was because, my theory was, because he could always just say, oh, I'm going to be 10 minutes late, 5 minutes later. Because he had a phone and he had the opportunity to shift it, he could do. Whereas if all we had was our word from the day before, that was it, and you stuck to it.
Mm-hmm.
And with phones, a significant part of that has taken over our thinking. At the very least, just for storage. Because it's not in here, it's in the phone. Yeah. So like when I was growing up, when I first got my phone, it had such shit memory, it couldn't hold numbers or many numbers. So I had a list in my head of all the numbers I needed. And then as I got older and older and technology advanced, that's gone. So now I think I know 4 off the top of my head. Mm-hmm. But I was quite fortunate in, I remember the lettings director at our previous company, he challenged me to learn all of the offices' numbers because you're going to need to know them. And so I learned all of them to work from there. And that was brilliant. I've still got some of them in my head. Mm-hmm. No idea why, but they are. But that was brilliant because then it forces your memory to actually take in useful information and keep it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that, I will admit I've fallen foul of. When I was at school, I used to be incredible. Well, I wouldn't say incredible. I'm not like a huge mathematician, but I was really good at maths. It was, you could easily do sums in your head and stuff like that. And over the last 10 years, because I've always got my phone and calculator on me, I don't even bother. And I notice that's a massive negative, especially when you're in business. Most of the sums I deal with all day long, so I know them from memory. However, when it's something out of the ordinary that aren't the exact figures that I use all the time, you struggle a bit more to do it because the processes isn't there, and you don't even bother. I don't even bother trying anymore because I get the phone out and just do it on there because it's quicker and easier. Yep. And it same like memory, as you said. My granddad and even my old man, they remember phone numbers. They learn the phone numbers because they've just got used to that process and having to do it. Because we don't need to. We don't even bother. And 100% back on the memory thing is, a lot of the time, people don't bother to remember or learn anything because they know they can just go on their phone and look it up. Now, the massive negative of that is, as we know, the science can change. Science changes these days. And the internet can be changed at a whim. A book, that can't just be changed. The book is there, it's physical, isn't it? But the internet can be changed. So it's looking at what's the word you use instead of conspiracy?
Unorthodox.
the unorthodox way that a lot of people assume the world is, i.e., if you read 1984, there's a lot of things that are going on in that book, which is just a book of fiction that is playing out in today's society. Back then, it was much harder to change the information because they had to change all the books, and then
That's where book burning came from.
exactly. But even in that fiction, they had to change all the books and reissue them, etc., etc. Whereas these days, so easy, just change it, change one thing, and it changes across billions of people's devices. It's too easy. So if you don't remember, it's very easy for us to be manipulated.
And with the seemingly unstoppable rise in AI,
That was the next thing I was going to talk about. That is extremely worrying, and
there's
if it gets out of control.
there's so many insidious aspects of it. With you have AI now, you can make AI songs that are really good. Like there's a whole Drake album that just he didn't make, and it's really good. There's an Amy Winehouse song, again AI, really good. You're like, well, again that's not possible because she's fucking dead. You can have people sponsoring products they'd never sponsored because AI's done it. You've got deep fake AI porn,
Really,
which is really insidious.
that is weird.
I mean, it's anatomically incorrect because that's not your body, but that's your face, so people don't know you don't know that.
That's a good point. I actually didn't go that far into thinking
No,
about it. But my point was
it's a
that
thing.
there is like Instagram models now that are AI. They're fake.
There's an OnlyFans model who's an AI bot, and she makes 5 figures a month on that. She
mental,
doesn't
isn't
do shit.
That's madness.
That's genius. I love that.
But I think that we go around the insidious and debauchery conversation about porn and things like that. Is the AI model? It's actually not a bad one because nobody's actually having to do anything and expose themselves.
Yeah.
That's quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So effectively, someone's paying for a computer-generated image of whatever it is that they want to please themselves with.
Pretty much. There's a Twitch streamer who was having this issue where a whole bunch of companies had taken her likeness and were doing that to her. She went, well, fuck this. So she started doing it, and she's now bigger than all of them. She's like, great, at least I get to monetize out of it.
Exactly,
She's like, it's not me, so I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, fine, go for it.
Yeah, in that respect, it's different and not necessarily. There's positive and negatives to every technological advance, isn't there? And it's strange that we got onto that one, but that's be
Come on, Max. It always comes back to AI porn. Carry on.
AI porn is life.
AI porn.
But on that respect, it's better and safer for the females around her. Same with the OnlyFans thing. Like previously, previous generations, they were prostitutes on the street, and now they haven't got to do that.
Well, I mean,
When I say previous generation, I mean like 100 years ago. I know there's been
but look, prostitutes do still exist.
they do, yeah.
Yeah, I've got some very good friends of mine.
Usually very cheap.
Yeah, I get base rates. It's all good. No, they do still exist.
Most of them, they should be paying you.
They should be. Yeah, they should be. Yeah. If what my cousin used to say, oh, so I give him the D for disappointment.
That's a good one. I like that.
Well, you've met Jamie. You're like, yeah, I see that. Yeah.
No, it's a good lad, yeah. Very disappointing.
It is interesting. It's like 100 years ago, prostitution was just what it was. So it's physical. Now we have a potential hybrid model. So you can either have the physical, the virtual, or in the middle. My hypothesis is that more women have joined the industry of sex work because the alternative for being virtual exists than would have if it never existed.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think it's more, we talk about the age of information. I actually think we live more in the age of debauchery. That is my thought I was having the other day, because it's easier accessible to drugs, alcohol, sex. Marriage rates are plummeting, divorce rates are rapidly increasing. As we said before, there's positives and negatives to the whole porn thing, especially with OnlyFans. Is the females are being less exploited because they're choosing to exploit themselves, if that makes sense, rather than being exploited by someone else.
For the price of a McDonald's Big Mac.
Yeah, exactly. You can pay £3 for something. And this, to me, this is where the ridiculousness and absolute frustration comes from. Is back in the day, in order to get that, that satisfaction or whatever it was, you had to put the work in to be a good enough person for the females to be attracted to in order to get to that level, to get the dopamine hit, to get the release that was required. So there was work required in order to achieve that. These days, you don't need to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Log on to a thing, and you're done. Do you know what I mean? You've got to pick of whoever you want, and within 30 seconds, you're done. But it's crazy, and I think that creates lethargy in lazy people. Obviously, there are always the outliers that push themselves forward to be better and want to be better. And the negatives in that is there is a whole slew of lazy people with no energy that are easily controlled and manipulated and moved. The positive is for those that don't do that, as you said before, the bar has been lowered so much that it's easier to overcome and get over it.
And the question is are there enough people who are seeing the bar so low and stepping up it to be able to keep this afloat?
That is a good point.
And that's the question. And that is a question we will come on to next time. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the inaugural episode of 2024. Cliffhangers for the audience and for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much for listening. Just remember to like and subscribe, everyone.
Take care.